Welcome to the third video in the PAA stool building series. In this video, we'll begin marking the half lap joints on the top and bottom cross pieces. We'll be doing plenty of measuring and utilizing both the imperial and metric tape measure. So grab your set of plans and let's get started. At this point, you'll have all the angles cut for the stool pieces. Be sure to keep your pieces well organized as we start to mark out the lap joints. A lap joint is an advanced woodworking technique where you create a notch on the top of one board and the bottom of the other. The two pieces slot together and end up sitting perfectly flush. Let's start with the top cross pieces. These should have been cut to 8 1/4. Before doing any measuring, place one board on the table with the longer side of the board down. Place the other piece on top but perpendicular to the first. It should create a cross. Ensure the longer side of the board is also facing down. The outside angles should match at this point. Check with your instructor if you're confused. With the pieces in the correct orientation, draw an X on the bottom of the top board and an X on the top of the bottom board. Let's watch that again. Draw an X on the bottom of the top board and an X on the top of the bottom board. This is when you'll want to switch to a metric tape measure. It's much easier to measure and divide a whole number than it is to divide a fraction. On the first board where you drew your X, measure the length. Take the measurement in millimeters and using a calculator, divide that number by 2 to find the center of your board and make a mark. From that mark, measure 1 inch in either direction and make 2 separate marks. Use a square to mark those lines across your board. On the edge of the board, you will need to draw a line at exactly half. This line will be drawn at 10 millimeters, which is half the width of our thickness. Make 2 marks roughly 2 inches apart and connect them with a straight edge. Finally, use a square to transfer the top lines down to connect with the halfway mark. Now flip the board over and do the same on the other side. You'll be left with a small notch to remove in a later step. Using the other top piece, draw the same marks, but make sure to draw on the side of the board that had the X. At this point, you will have 2 notches marked out to be cut so your pieces will slot together. Double check the angles and then show your instructor. Once the top cross pieces are done, you can move on to the bottom cross pieces. This is a very similar process, but the 2 boards must sit vertically, not flat. Lay one board up on edge and then place the other board on top, perpendicular to the first. Check the outside angles to make sure they're going the same direction. Mark each of the meeting edges with an X. Following the same process as the top cross pieces, measure the length of the board and then find the center point. Make a mark at the center of the board. This time, measure over 10 millimeters in either direction. And then using a square, square the lines across. On the face of the board, measure down 1 inch and draw 2 separate marks. Finally, transfer the top lines down to meet the center line that you just drew. Connect the bottom line with a straight edge. Now we have the finish notch on this side. Flip the board over and make the same marks on the other side. Do the same marks on the other bottom cross piece and pay close attention to the angles. Check with your instructor to make sure you've done it correctly. Now you'll have a lap joint marked out for the bottom cross pieces. And finally, let's move on to marking out the taper for the legs. Lay out your legs so that they're all facing the same direction. At the top of one board, measure down 5 inches. Then use a square to draw the line straight across. At the bottom of the leg, measure in 1/2 inch from one side and make a mark. Then flip your tape measure and measure 1/2 inch from the other side and make a mark. Using a long straight edge, feel free to use another one of the legs, or in this case a carpenter square. Draw a line connecting the 5 inch mark with the 1/2 inch mark. Do this on one side of the leg, then draw the line on the other side of the leg. Repeat those marks on the other 3 legs. I recommend having a partner. It makes it go really fast. We will eventually use the bandsaw to create these tapers. With all of your boards marked out, you are now done with this step. Keep track of your material by initialing each piece, and then find a safe space for your project in the back storage room. And that's going to do it for this video. Be sure to check out the next video in the series for the next set of steps in the stool building process.